everyone, welcome back into the video. So I guess we're gonna be doing something a little different because I normally don't talk about like typical like tech anything. I guess gaming is technically that because it's technology, but this is revolving a big situation in the YouTube community. Like this is this whole big expose. For those PC gamers out there, you obviously know of Gamers Nexus where they did a whole 44-minute video exposing the many mistakes that you all know who Linus Tech Tips, right? And his company LMG, Linus Media Group. Well, like I said before, Steve from Gamers Nexus did an insane video just going over their concerns and mistakes about it's damning. It's pretty damning. But, like, just wow. But anyway, I guess before I I want to mention this, that there was actually an ex-employee who came out, pointing out, kind of talking about some of the working conditions behind the scenes, and boy, that thread, it's bad. Like, I'll have a link to that thread if you're interested in it as well. I'm gonna also link the 44-minute video because I'm not gonna be going over everything, or this video would be way longer than it needs to be. It's gonna be pretty long when it's all said and done. But anyway, let's get started with the first clip.
A few days ago, this clip from an LTT lab tour got a lot of attention online.
The difference between us and somebody like Gamers Nexus or Hardware Unboxed is we test new components, new tests every time.
And then Hardware Unboxed tweeted dissatisfaction with the statement made in that tour. We didn't say anything at all, anywhere.
Damn. Wow, they literally took a shot at Gamers Nexus right off the bat. And as you'll see in this video, it's proven to be a lie. So, personally, probably if they didn't put that in there, that shot at, Gamers Nexus, there probably wouldn't be as much attention, because that was kind of an unnecessary dig, in my opinion, at Gamers Nexus, because based on things that I've seen, because before I got my GPU and all that, before I set my PC up, full disclosure, I actually watched benchmarks of the 4080, and Gamers Nexus does great work. They really do. So I recommend them. So if you're a PC gamer, but most PC gamers who want to get the bang for their buck, you're probably already watching them anyways. So for new people who have never heard of them before, hey, check them out. I recommend it. Okay, now let's get into the the meat and potatoes of this whole thing. But you know how it is. You guys know how it goes, man. Like, it's wow. Anyway, let's keep going.
Entering technical data-driven reviews and marketing on the back of that means that there needs to be proper work to back all of that up, because people are now putting a different level of faith in the material coming out, and the expectations are different. And we know these issues at LTT in terms of the rushing, the pushing employees and staff to hit deadlines despite concerns with the data or the collection of the data. We know that these come from top down, as shown in a recent LTT interview that it conducted with its own employees, where many of them stated concerns with content quality pertaining to restrictive time constraints.
Let's publish less videos.
I wish we could back off the amount and focus on quality for a bit.
More time for projects would be good.
Just allow us more time to work on a video.
We never have time for retrospection. It's always just, that's out. What's the next thing?
Would be nice if the pace was lessened a little bit. Have time to like debrief or look in the rearview mirror at how things went.
I don't love that we have to release so many videos. I don't know what our current count is weekly, but I know it's very high. Very rarely am I particularly proud of a video I've worked on.
And Linus's own comments recently.
What the fuck?
Wow, 25 videos per week. That is insane. Like that. Just imagine the amount of manpower and man hours that employees have to put themselves through. Like, they're being worked to death. Like they literally said, they expressed concerns about being worked to death. And as you can see, they are. It's factually improved. Like, imagine that. Just how many hours. manpower. And this is a $100 million plus, company, by the way. So this isn't just some fly night YouTuber. This is a whole media company, by the way. So it's kind of insane. And when you have to do that much content, there's bound to be mistakes. And so maybe it's example of overworking your employees and that you're trying to do too much, bite off more than you can chew. If I were Linus, I would consider kind of cutting it down, not putting as much content per week, because 25 plus is insane. Plus you're doing the whole podcast show, as they brought up. That's a whole nother thing too. So again, this video isn't going to be really in depth. There's plenty to talk about when it comes to this whole expose. I'm only going off, kind of showing the meat and potatoes, the ones that I find interesting. So, speaking of which, we're gonna get to the next part where one of the lesser known examples of them screwing up is where they actually show off some of the benchmarks. You remember the 4000 series came out last year, right? So, either way, obviously have a 4080. That was a $1,200 GPU. So they compare it to the 3090 Ti, and wow, you'll see it. You're about to see in a second just how bad of a screw up they did in this first example. Anyway, let's go.
Concerns that we have regarding sort of the corporate positioning that LMG is in now. Even with its heavily marketed debut of Labs, LMG is still consistently making errors in nearly every single review that they publish. It is okay to make errors. All of us do this in this line of work, but the concern we have is that these types of errors are in nearly every single LTT technical or review type of video. So there are enough errors that we can't fit them all into a normal length video. We'll cover a few of them as fast as we can to establish the premise and the concerns, and everything is from the last year only. We're starting with the missed published errors. The more troubling ones are later in the video. Let's start with the entire 40 series. LTT's 40 series reviews started with the RTX 4090, which debuted with multiple erroneous charts, but one in particular was heavily written into the conclusion of the card. That chart was for Cyberpunk, where LTT allowed to slip past them an outlier with the 4090 outperforming the 3090 Ti by 300%. In reality, that should be closer to 72 to 75%. We explained this previously, but that's because LTT didn't properly set their test parameters and double check that the graphic settings weren't changing due to other dependencies during test setup. This is a massive human error, and it is indicative of poor process control. No amount of blaming the video game or blaming how its settings behave is going to get you off the hook for this. It's simply human error. That anyone could then look at this chart and think it makes any sense further indicates poor understanding of the data collected. Most of the rest of their own data was relatively consistent, so there should have been clear indicators that this was wrong. Despite being the only one they originally corrected in their comment, this wasn't LTT's only error, and that's a separate concern, because it comes across as burying just how many errors there truly were by only acknowledging the obvious one or not being aware of them. Both are bad. Shadow of the Tomb Raider from that same review was even more bizarre, with the 3090 Ti outperforming the 3090 by 61%. It should be closer to 13% maximally. Once again, there's a lack of basic attention to detail, maybe even knowledge, to identify such massive errors. Moving to automation makes this even more dangerous, because now you need the skill to identify flaws through numbers alone without even looking at the screen. The trouble was just how long it took LTT to acknowledge this mistake. This should have triggered deletion of the video basically immediately when they confirmed it was erroneous. Probably a community post on YouTube, a Twitter post, and a timeline for a fixed video with corrections. But LTT waited days to fix it, and they eventually posted a comment, but they didn't even pin it until people in the community started getting mad about that. That comment that was posted also didn't disclose all the errors, just the lowest hanging fruit of them, which is Cyberpunk. And eventually they replaced the entire video in place. They didn't delete it. There's a YouTube feature that we don't have, most YouTube creators don't have, where they can swap it in place. So they did that, but only after over 1 million people saw it. And we don't believe there was enough active outreach to get in front of this bad data and alert those 1 million+ people that their purchasing decisions may need to be reevaluated if that data influenced those decisions. Probably there should have been a recall of the content. If you're curious how we handle these issues, the point here isn't really to talk about that. We have a published set of guidelines that we follow. It is our process and our standard now. That's on gamers.nexus. It's been there a little while. The 4060 review had enough evidence of being rushed, but one of the other pieces was this chart, where an A750 is shown to be better than an RTX 4060 Ti with ray tracing on, which no other public data seems to support, including our own. They probably remade their 4090 mistake here with applying different settings, or perhaps some type of upscaling. They didn't even catch this one. This is another one of the ones that I caught. In their 4060 review, we noticed that their GTX 1060 gains 20% more performance than shown in their 7600 review. That's definitely not from a driver change with a card this old, and nothing else in those charts really moved, so it shouldn't be from a methodological change either. This is clearly an error in one of the two results. That no one noticed this is beyond us. In the 4060 Ti review, they think that memory sharing between the GPU and system memory isn't a thing without rebar, which is just straight misinformation. More recently in June, LTT published its RTX 4060 review with an incorrect lane count in the spec sheet. They listed it as by 16 when it's actually by 8. In May before this, LTT previously made the same exact mistake with its RTX 4060 Ti review. This video on YouTube, they replaced it in place again using the special feature that most people don't have, but if you look at their Billy channel, you can see what the original was, which was the wrong data. In the month since, they didn't roll forward that correction. LTT had already corrected this once before, which indicates to us that they are once again lacking the proper processes to ensure learned lessons carry forward. So it is missing basic research, which once again starts to become reckless, irresponsible.
Hello? Hey man. How's it going?
You know what time it is?
Do you? Because it's 4:20 somewhere. I know that. Is that the phrase?
Are you drunk?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. The first alarming bell to me is how they initially thought. Okay, first thing before we get to the actual benchmarks, the fact that they didn't even update the drivers for the 3090 Ti. That is insane. Like, that automatically alone. Huge fatal flaw right there, as Steve pointed out. Huge flaw. Then let's get the actual benchmarks of it. Because they didn't actually do their diligence and update the drivers for 3090 Ti. So because of that resulted in the incorrect benchmarks they got for games like Cyberpunk, which was in their initial test was a 300% when in actuality it was more like 72 to 75%, as Gamer Nexus pointed out. You see the big failure right there. That's so bizarre. Like, why didn't they? Wouldn't it make sense to make sure that your drivers are up to date for a GPU before you even think about running benchmarks? So how in the world did Linus and his team not think that through beforehand? Like, it's just common sense. Any PC gamer would know this. Like, so how Linus and his team, again, this is a huge company, by the way, that is making this fatal mistake. Like, how in the world? It's so bizarre. Like, it's so strange. You're supposed to be reviewing these products, and you're trying to sell these to, customers already. So, again, how do you mess that up? Like, that's just insane to me. Maybe it's because of them trying to, essentially get it out the door to be first, because that's how YouTube works. Like, everyone has to notice when product reviews come out, you have to rush it out the door, because that's how the YouTube algorithm works. Maybe it's a victim of that. Maybe it's something that YouTube needs to look into. That's a topic that we can easily discuss for another day. But still, though, the fact that they couldn't even bother to update the drivers is insane to me. Especially for a game as demanding as Cyberpunk 2077, which even has its own benchmarking that you can run within the game itself. That's insane to me. So I don't know why Linus didn't think that through. Again, maybe it's because he was trying to force, get the video out as soon as possible for the views. But hey, I respect the hustle, but But come on, man, you're reviewing it, so people, these are products that people are trying to buy. You know, if they're interested, they want the most accurate information they could get, because $1,600 is a lot of money, especially for something like a video card. So you absolutely need to have the most accurate information before you can even think about making a purchasing decision. So in that aspect, Linus and his team failed to do their job correctly. Now moving on from that topic, we're going to get on to, I say, the final clip I'm going to show, just from this video again. Again, check out the full video, link in the description below. It's about a 45-minute video, so. And Steve also pointed, before we get to the last part, Steve also pointed this out, that they don't actually, kind of say, when they're making a correction, people just, like Steve pointed out, and I do this too, I just listen to the audio of a video. Because, like, say I'm watching like a news video or something by a YouTuber or something, more often than not, I'll just listen to the audio while I'm doing something else, to be quite honest with you. Because if it's like a news story, like, do I really need to actually watch the visual of it and just listen to the audio and still get that information? Especially when, because there are people like that, like I just said. So if you're doing like a correction, hey, Andrew from the future here, say I make a mistake or whatever while recording the video, I, say, hey, from the future, I realize this correction. Linus just put text in it. Him and his team just put text in it. Now, I don't think they realize that people may just listen to the audio of their videos. So from that aspect, they should absolutely account for that in the future, in any video they do in the future. So, yeah. So in that aspect, something I didn't think about until Steve brought it up. Thought I should put it out there. That, yeah, he's right. He's absolutely right. There are people that do that, where they just listen to the audio of a video while they're doing something else. Admittedly, sometimes when I'm in a gameplay, I'm not watching like a cutscene or whatever. Sometimes I'll just play YouTube videos and, just listen to the audio while I'm playing a game or whatever. Whenever it's not just, like cutscenes or whatever, admittedly. So, because I could still have ears, because, I could still listen to the audio of the game itself, while also listening to what the audio of the video is playing and whatnot. So you can do two different things, but still. Anyway, mini side rant over. Now let's get to the final part of this clip, of this whole thing, because, like, damn, this one is like the most damning out of this 44-minute video, if you ask me. Anyway, let's go.
Thousands of dollars for manufacturing, not counting opportunity value. In the video, the LTT team stuck this special 3090 Ti water block on an RTX 4090.
If this wasn't a 3090 Ti, then we don't have another 3090 Ti that we can take apart.
How the hell did we not know what GPU this thing was?
I thought it was a 3090 Ti.
So we just casually had a 4090 sitting on the shelf, clearly labeled?
Stating that it should work, despite it not being explicitly compatible. The company did not tell LMG that it would be 4090 compatible. They told LMG that they could try to use a 4090, but Billet Labs itself had not tested one, as it didn't have a 4090 at the time. Water blocks have very specific tolerances and clearances for components, so any misalignment would cause poor contact to the GPU core. LMG decided to try it and continued with the video despite misrepresenting the product massively by using it on an incompatible device that it literally would not fit properly. LTT's presentation goes down the path of being irresponsible, presenting the product as much more difficult to work with than it would be if used properly. The conclusion is,
like, it's a cool product, but it's a bad product.
It looks great.
Yeah, it looks super cool.
Are you just saying it's bad just purely because of the price?
It's bad because it makes absolutely no sense and nobody should buy it. Most of the community is actually really amazing. But there's a vocal minority that looks at something like that and goes, lazy, out of touch, whatever else. No, I'm just really experienced at this.
As long as you got it.
Crap! Did you put it backward?
Get a shot of that. Look at that.
It founds this conclusion on the basis of improper installation. This serves no one. It needlessly harms a small company, and this kind of behavior can kill someone's life work in a heartbeat, and it'd be based on invalid testing and presentation. One of the company founders posted below the video and stated this, quote, "We love LTT, but it was difficult to watch their criticisms when pretty much every design issue that Linus raised was done for a reason which was all explained to Adam weeks ago, none of which, I guess, was fed back to Linus. We also sent a full instruction manual that seemingly wasn't used. I think there's definitely been a major communication breakdown along the video pipeline. We assumed we'd have a chance to answer any problems that were raised and explain them before it being publicly misrepresented." LMG faced some controversy from its community, at which point it replied on the following WAN show, doubling down despite a complete lack of accurate or even useful testing.
Nothing would have changed. Nothing that obeys the laws of physics would have changed the conclusion.
That statement is already a reckless and problematic doubling down, considering the elimination of any possibility to change the conclusion, including a 20-degree reduction, which should change the conclusion.
If the GPU had been 5 degrees cooler, that would have been the conclusion. If it had been 10 degrees cooler, that would have been the conclusion. If it had been 20 degrees cooler, that would have been the conclusion.
And we're not alone in saying they should have just done it properly. At least then you have grounds to stand on for criticisms.
I also get not wanting to retest, but I do think probably just testing it with the thing that they knew it worked with in the first place probably would have made sense. Because like you're saying, the test result itself doesn't matter. But if it's just supposed to look cool, then it should be seated properly so it looks cool.
After about 5 minutes of rambling, the conclusion effectively was, lol, it still sucks though. Linus then, after publicly humiliating and trashing the work of two guys just getting their start in business while relying on zero effort to examine the thing correctly, complains about how he'd have to spend $100 to $500 more on an employee's time to test it properly.
But I'm not... I don't know, guys. I'm not sure if I can apologize for not spending another $100, $200, $300, $500 of various people's time sitting and engineering a workaround to a product that no matter the result, nobody should buy.
Now, we don't have any connection to Billet Labs, and that comment was offensive even to us, so we can't imagine how heartbroken they must have been. Linus, in order to protect his company's bottom line, was willing to potentially inflict immeasurable harm to a startup rather than spend, by his own admission, a couple $100 in someone else's time out of the $100 million company's coffers. Making matters worse, in conversations with Billet Labs, Gamers Nexus learned that the company asked for the prototype back on June 28th. This would allow them to send it out to other media or use it for further development. Linus Media Group agreed at least twice to return the product. The first time they agreed to send it back was June 30th. At LTX, Linus Media Group put the one-of-a-kind water block up for auction at its Extra Life auction event, without the permission of Billet Labs. Billet did not learn of this until around August 11th, at which point it was told the block is gone. Again, this is despite LMG agreeing in late June to send it back, as LMG would have no further use for the block. Billet told us that it is now stalled, as it no longer has its best prototype available for continued development. It's also missing one of its GPUs. We voiced to Billet a concern of a potential competitor, many of whom were at LTX where it was auctioned, potentially getting a hold of the block to send it off to be cloned. Whether or not this happened is irrelevant. The point is that there's a responsibility that was ignored. The question that you have to ask as a reviewer is, am I being fair when making this type of commentary? And that's regardless of whether you are just an entertainer or you have your entertainer hat on for that video, but not the next one. And this is particularly important for anyone marketing the future of their business's success on the back of objectivity, fairness.
Kiss my balls, lick the juice from my asshole, you fucking fuck face. You fat bastard. You hear me, bitch? Huh? Come on down here, you sucking suck gay ass motherfucker.
Wow. Not only did they not even use the right GPU that was the cooler was designed for. Not to mention, they literally not essentially sold it, but they auctioned it for charity. I mean, which, as Steve said, it's worse than they sold it for a profit, really, which is kind of insane that they did it for charity. But here's the real shit kicker, by the way, folks. Linus didn't even tell the company that they did it. They auctioned off for charity until after this video got released. Can you imagine how insane that is? That's like, say a game company contacted me and asked me to review a game, right? Like a physical copy of a video game, right? And then I went, without permission, I went behind their backs and sold the game for profit when the game isn't out yet. Like, think about how that is that could be damaging to a small company, which this is a starter up company that sent the team this unit to review, right? And they go out of their way to essentially, rip it to shreds. Think about how much damaging that is. Like, that can damage companies, especially starter ones. That's insane to me. Now, I should point out that Linus did reach out, like I said before, and told them, kind of asked them, hey, how can we, compensate you for, for them, how much it costs, which I think it was like around $800 or something like that. But I guess it was nice of Linus to actually do that. But still, though, he shouldn't have went behind their backs. Like, he should have, asked for permission at least first, I guess. And what's kind of funny is that Linus said, hey, to the gamers, like, hey, you should have called me first. Right. So you're pulling the Pat NES Punk situation, right? Like, no, that's not how YouTube works. Like, that is not how this works. It's a platform. Like, who really cares? Like if you really, but what's kind of funny, Linus, is that do you call up, say Anchor? Do you call them up and ask before you criticize them on your show? I guarantee you don't. So why the hell should I guess YouTuber, call them out or whatever, right? So that's not how this works, man. Like, it's just insane. Or say, hey, I had to call, say, Microsoft say, hey, you should have asked me before I criticized them after the whole Redfall release. That's stupid. That's dumb. Like, it's free speech. Like, I shouldn't have to contact a corporation to be given permission to make a video about them. That's called fair use. Like, come on now. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Now that the video clips are out of the way, again, check out the full video. I'll have a link down in the description below. But after this, Linus actually went on his forum instead of making a video originally. And interview from the future here, Linus did actually make an actual video before I read this forum post. That's now been deleted. They actually made a whole video with him, his wife, and some of his team were saying they're taking a break, kind of reevaluate things. I'm like, yeah, I really hope you do change things around, Linus, and hopefully this was a huge wake-up call, because you're getting a lot of backlash for it, because the video was called, like, what do we do now? So it was very interesting. It was very smart. And I really hope this wake-up call set you and your company back on the right path, and that you learn from this whole thing. But anyway, let's read this forum post then, shall we? There won't be a big show segment about this or anything. Most of what I have to say, I've already said. Done so privately to Steve. I expressed my disappointment that he didn't go through proper journalistic practices in creating it. He asked my email and number, along with numerous other members of our team, asked me for context. What context? Proven to be valuable, like the fact that we didn't sell the monoblock, but rather auction it due to a miscommunication. You kind of see with this whole thing, like I just said, and the fact that we haven't sent payment yet. We've already agreed to compensate Labs for the call set prototype. Like I said, I think it's like $800 or something like that. There are other issues, but I've told him that I don't want to be drawn to a public sniping match over this. Now, if we continue to move forward on good faith as part of team media, whenever he's ready to do so again, I'll be ready. To my team, this is talking about him to his company, which, by the way, he stepped down from the CEO role, by the way. Funny enough. Basically, I was at the helm for all the errors. I need to own it. I stress the importance of diligence in our work because there's so many eyes on us. We are going through some growing pains and be very public about them in the interest of transparency. It's all clear we have some work to do in internal processes and in communication. We have already been doing a lot of work internally to clean up our process. But these things take time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and there is no excuse for sloppiness. I'm not going to say, kind of read the whole thing, but basically, he starts, essentially kind of playing the victim cards, like, how dare you criticize me or anything like that. I'm like, anyway. So that's like real. Linus.
You blew it. Capiche?
Like, you blew it, dude. Like, there's a reason why you deleted this forum post in the first place and put out that video. So you knew that it was a bad idea. You knew that you were gonna get backlash for this, and that's kind of why you was like, hey, I'm probably not thinking straight. Like, you gotta really think about things like this, man. Like, why did you put out that forum post? When you could have just done a video like you ended up doing in the first place. Wouldn't it save yourself the headache of typing up this post on your forum? Anyway, it's kind of good that you would kind of admit it, and that seemingly they're shutting down all production videos to kind of reevaluate things. But like I said before, I hope you guys truly learn from this, because I think people deserve second chances, and I'll be following this story. It's going to be developing more. Like I said, there was a huge thread about it from an ex-employee. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'll have a link to that in the description if you're interested in reading it. It paints a pretty horrifying picture behind the scenes. And Linus, like all CEOs of a corporation, man. Like, if you really think, people really think that it's all people actually acting like adults and behind the scenes. More often than the time, it's not. It's not the case at all, because human beings are just one step above animals, if you really want to think about it. But anyway, I think I said long enough. But wow, this story is wild, man. Like, it's pretty nuts, especially because it's coming from somebody like Linus, where he's been doing this for so long. You would think he would know better to not make these mistakes, but again, he has a company now, MG. They own multiple channels, so it's a pretty huge company. But I guess at the end of the day, people should learn from their mistakes, and not kind of double down. Actually kind of look at things a different way. Kind of realize the mistakes you did and learn from them. I think that's all I kind of need to say on this, honestly. But anyway, that's it from me. What do you guys think? If you really stuck around for this whole video, I very much appreciate it. And if you like this video, hit the like button. Comment down below what did you think of this whole mess. And consider hitting that sub button so you do not miss any more videos. And I'll see all of you in the next one.